We have breaking news in one of the world's most infamous missing persons mysteries.
A German prisoner has been identified as a new suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann from a holiday resort in Portugal 13 years ago.
Madeleine is a beautiful, bright, funny and caring little girl. She is so special. We need our Madeleine, and Madeleine needs us. Please give our little girl back.
A young woman steps into an elevator. The date is February 1st, 2013. The location? The infamous Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She presses a column of buttons, one after another, a frantic, vertical line of choices. But the doors, they do not slide shut. She waits. She peers into the hallway, looking left, then right, her movements sharp and jagged. It is as if she is navigating a world that has suddenly shifted its axis. She hides in the corner, pressing her back against the cold metal, her breath held, her body tense. She steps back out, and then she simply ceases to exist. 3 weeks later, the guests at the hotel begin to complain. They tell the staff the water tastes strange, that the pressure in their showers is low. Some describe a dark, metallic tint in the sinks where they brush their teeth. Maintenance climbs to the roof. They open a heavy steel tank, and they find the impossible. But here's the question that refuses to rest. How does a 21-year-old student, alone in a historic hotel, vanish from a monitored elevator, only to be discovered in a sealed cistern that required a key and a ladder she never had? Tonight, we traverse the halls of the Cecil. We look past the viral theories and the elevator game myths. We are looking for the truth about Elisa Lam. And by the end of this investigation, we will examine a forensic detail often overlooked, a detail that suggests the most terrifying part of this case wasn't what was in the hallway, but what was happening inside the mind. This is the anatomy of a vanishing. Before the headlines, before the elevator footage became a global obsession, Elisa Lam was a daughter. She was a student at the University of British Columbia, and more than anything, she was a writer. Born in Vancouver to Hong Kong immigrants, Elisa was raised in a quiet, supportive home, but she lived a second life online. On her Tumblr blog, titled Etherfields, she curated a world of fashion, photography, and deep, introspective prose. She quoted novels that felt too big for her chest to hold. She spoke of her great West Coast adventure, a solo trip she hoped would help her find clarity. To her friends, she was brilliant, if occasionally quiet. She had a vibrant sense of style and a hunger for experience. But Elisa also wrote candidly about her struggles with bipolar disorder. She described it as a monster she had to manage every single day. On January 2013, she boarded a plane for California. It was meant to be a journey of self-discovery. San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Cruz. She called her parents every single day. She sent photos of sunny streets and bookstores. On January 26th, she checked into the Hotel Cecil. At the time, she didn't know the building's history. She didn't know about the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, or the decades of violence that had earned the hotel its dark reputation. She saw a budget-friendly hostel in a historic building. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. She visited the last bookstore nearby. She bought gifts for her family. She looked like any other tourist lost in the sprawl of LA. But on January 31st, the daily calls to Vancouver stopped. The girl who loved stories had stopped writing. The timestamp on the surveillance footage reads, February 1st, 2013, shortly after midnight. To understand why this video became a global obsession, we must look past the grain and the shadows. We must look at the timing. For 4 minutes, Elisa Lam is the only person captured by the camera, but she acts as if the elevator is crowded with ghosts. Elisa enters. She wears a crimson-red hoodie, a dark skirt, and sandals. Her posture is relaxed at first, She walks directly to the control panel and presses a vertical column of buttons, not just one, but many. She then retreats to the back right corner of the car. The doors do not move. They remain wide open, exposing the dark, silent hallway of the 14th floor. Elisa becomes impatient. She leans forward, peering out into the corridor. Then, in a movement that has been analyzed by millions, she suddenly jumps back into the elevator, pressing herself flat against the corner wall. It is the universal gesture of someone hiding. She peers out again. This time she steps into the hallway. She performs a strange, fluttering walk, side to side, looking left, then right, as if checking for a pursuer. She returns to the elevator, her hands fumbling with the buttons again. She seems to be pressing the door hold button, perhaps unintentionally, which would explain why the sensors refuse to close the gap. 12:03 a.m. This is the moment the case enters the realm of the surreal. Elisa stands in the hallway. Her back is to the camera. Her hands begin to move in fluid, twisting patterns. Her fingers splay out at impossible angles. It looks like she is conducting an invisible orchestra, or perhaps arguing with someone just out of sight. There is no one there, at least no one the camera can see. Finally, she walks out of the frame, disappearing into the left side of the hallway. Seconds later, the elevator doors finally slide shut. The car moves to another floor. It is empty. When the LAPD released this footage, they weren't looking for ghosts. They were looking for a route. If Elisa left that elevator, where did she go? The 14th floor of the Cecil was a labyrinth of narrow corridors, faded wallpaper, and heavy fire doors. To reach the roof from that floor, a person had two distinct choices. The first was the internal staircase, but that door was protected by a high-decibel alarm system. The hotel staff testified under oath that no alarm was triggered that night. The second was the fire escape. This required stepping out onto a rusted metal platform, hundreds of feet above the pavement of Skid Row, and climbing a vertical ladder to the top of the building. In the weeks following her disappearance, local rumors began to seep out of the Cecil's lobby. Residents spoke of a shadow floor, areas of the hotel where the CCTV cameras were broken or intentionally turned off. They spoke of the Night Stalker connection, how Richard Ramirez used to walk these same halls in the 1980s, discarding his bloody clothes in the dumpsters and blending back into the shadows. But the most persistent rumor involved the rooftop itself. The 4 water tanks, massive 8-foot-tall cylinders, were the primary source of water for the hotel's taps and showers. They sat on concrete blocks, elevated and imposing. Local maintenance workers whispered that the tanks were often left unsecured, that the heavy lids, each weighing over 20 pounds, were sometimes propped open by long-term residents looking for a place to hide contraband. For 19 days, Elisa Lam was missing, and for 19 days, the guests of the Cecil drank, bathed, and brushed their teeth with the water from those tanks. It wasn't until the morning of February 19th that the strange taste became undeniable. On the morning of February 19th, Santiago Lopez, a maintenance worker at the Cecil, climbed the ladder to the roof. He wasn't looking for a person. He was looking for a clog. The guests had been complaining for days. They spoke of black water and a foul, sweet taste. When Lopez reached the top of the 4-cistern array, he noticed something unusual about Tank 1. The hatch was open. He climbed to the rim and peered inside. The tank was nearly full, and there, floating face up in the dark, stagnant water, was Elisa Lam. The recovery process took hours. The LA Fire Department had to cut a hole in the side of the heavy metal tank because the opening at the top was too narrow to retrieve a body without disturbing the scene. When Elisa was finally brought out, the first mystery of the rooftop revealed itself. She was nude. Her clothes, The same red hoodie and dark shorts seen in the video were at the bottom of the tank, weighed down by the water. Alongside them were her watch and her room key. There was no blood, there were no visible bruises, there were no signs of a struggle. The world immediately asked, how? How did a woman weighing barely 120 pounds lift a 20-pound steel lid, climb inside and, as early reports claimed, close the lid behind her? The autopsy was conducted by the Los Angeles County coroner, and the results were as baffling as the footage. The cause of death, accidental drowning. The toxicology, a presence of her prescribed medications, but at levels that suggested she was under-medicated. This is where the rumors of a cover-up began. Internet detectives pointed to the fact that the lid was reportedly closed when the body was found. If Elisa was alone, she couldn't have closed it from the inside. However, the maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, later testified in a deposition that the lid was actually open when he arrived. The closed lid was a media myth, a detail that had been distorted by the telephone game of breaking news. But then, we have to look at the paradoxical undressing. In many cases of extreme hypothermia or severe psychological distress, the brain misfires. Victims often feel as though they are burning up, leading them to strip off their clothes in a final, frantic act of confusion. Did Elisa, trapped in the cold water of a tank in the middle of a February night, lose her sense of reality? And then there is the Lam Elisa coincidence. Locals and conspiracy theorists pointed to a strange fact. During the time of Elisa's disappearance, there was a tuberculosis outbreak in the surrounding Skid Row area. The test used to detect the outbreak? It is a detail so specific it feels like a glitch in the Matrix. But forensic experts point out that Lam Elisa stands for lipoarabinomannan enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. It is a standard medical acronym, a cruel, mathematical coincidence in a case already overflowing with them. We must return to the monster Elisa wrote about in her blog. Psychological profiles of the elevator footage suggest that Elisa wasn't talking to a ghost or a killer. She was likely experiencing a severe manic episode. The exaggerated hand movements, the pressing of all the buttons, the hiding. These are hallmark behaviors of a person experiencing a break from reality. In a state of acute mania, the brain does not process danger or impossibility the way yours does. To Elisa, the fire escape might not have looked like a rusted ladder. It might have looked like an exit. The water tank might not have looked like a trap. It might have looked like a sanctuary. But if this was a medical tragedy, why does it still feel like a crime? Because the Cecil Hotel itself was the silent accomplice. The fact that a guest could access a roof, climb a fire escape, and enter the building's primary water supply without a single alarm being raised points to a catastrophic failure of security. The evidence isn't just in the elevator. It's in the open doors, the broken alarms, and the 19 days that a young woman was left in the dark. Beyond the millions of views, the Reddit threads, and the documentaries, there is a quiet living room in Vancouver that will never be the same. In the days following Elisa's disappearance, her parents, David and Elisa Lam, flew to Los Angeles. They didn't speak to the press. They didn't seek the spotlight. They spent their days in the lobby of the Cecil, the very place their daughter was last seen, pleading with investigators for any shred of hope. Imagine the weight of that flight home. Imagine the moment they were told that for nearly 3 weeks, their daughter had been just floors away from where they stood, trapped in the dark. In September 2013, the Lams filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Cecil Hotel. They alleged that the hotel had a duty to inspect and maintain the premises in a reasonably safe condition and to protect guests from foreseeable criminal activities. But the legal system is often as cold as the water in those tanks. The hotel's defense argued that because no one, not even the police with their K9 units, could have predicted Elisa would climb a fire escape and enter a water tank, the event was unforeseeable. In 2015, a judge dismissed the suit. The court ruled that Elisa's death was a tragic accident that the hotel could not have prevented. The Lams retreated into a dignified silence. They closed Elisa's blog. They stopped the public search. But for them, the elevator footage isn't a mystery to be solved. It is the final, agonizing memory of a daughter they could not save. Elisa Lam's story is often told as a ghost story, a legend of the Cecil Hotel. But when we strip away the elevator game and the internet myths, we are left with a more terrifying reality. A young woman who was lost in plain sight. But our investigation into footage that leads nowhere is only half finished. While Elisa was found, our next case involves a disappearance where there is no footage of the act itself. No grain, no shadows. Only a void where a 3-year-old girl used to be. We are leaving the urban decay of downtown Los Angeles for the sun-bleached cliffs of Praia da Luz, Portugal. We are moving from a case where the world saw too much to a case where the world saw nothing at all. When we return, we examine the night of May 3rd, 2007, the window that shouldn't have been open, the scent of a cadaver dog in a rental car, and the mystery that has haunted the world for nearly 2 decades. The search for Madeleine McCann begins now. If Elisa Lam's story was one of too much footage, this is a story of a haunting absence. Madeleine McCann was 3 years old. To the world, she is a frozen image, a little girl with a rare mark in her right eye, a dark strip on her iris known as a coloboma. But to her parents, Jerry and Kate, she was Maddie. She was a whirlwind of energy who loved pink dresses, CBeebies, and her younger twin siblings, Sean and Emily. The McCanns were highly accomplished doctors from Leicestershire. In May 2007, they sought a simple reprieve, a family vacation in the quiet resort town of Praia da Luz, Portugal. They stayed in apartment 5A of the Ocean Club Resort. It was meant to be a week of tapas dinners, tennis, and toddler-filled afternoons by the pool. Madeleine was happy. In the final photo taken of her, she is sitting by the pool in a sun hat, dangling her legs in the water. She looks like a child with 1,000 tomorrows, but tomorrow never came. To understand the mystery of apartment 5A, you must understand the geometry of the resort. The McCanns and their group of friends, later known as the Tapas 7, dined every night at a restaurant just 50 yards away from their rooms. They didn't use a baby monitor. Instead, they took turns. Every 30 minutes, one parent would leave the table, walk the short path back to the apartments, and check on the sleeping children. Kate and Jerry leave the children in the apartment and head to dinner. Madeleine and the twins are fast asleep. 9:05 p.m. Jerry McCann performs the first check. He enters through the unlocked sliding patio doors. He sees the 3 children sleeping peacefully. He notices the bedroom door is slightly more open than he left it, but he thinks nothing of it. Jane Tanner, one of the Tapas 7, is walking to her own apartment when she sees a man carrying a small child in pajamas. The man is walking quickly, away from the resort. She doesn't realize the significance. Not yet. 9:30 p.m. Matthew Oldfield, another friend, offers to check the McCann's room. He listens at the door. It is silent. He doesn't physically walk into the bedroom to look at the beds. This would become one of the most debated what-ifs in history. 10:00 p.m. It is Kate's turn. She walks into the apartment. It is too quiet. A draft of cold night air hits her face. She looks toward the children's bedroom. The window is wide open. The curtains are fluttering, and Madeleine's bed is empty. The scream that followed would echo across the resort, and then the world. They've taken her. Someone has taken her. The Portuguese police, Polícia Judiciária, arrived, but the initial response was a catastrophic failure of forensic protocol. The apartment was not sealed. Dozens of people, friends, staff, and even strangers walked through the crime scene, trampling over potential evidence. While the LAPD had 4 minutes of footage for Elisa Lam, the Portuguese police had nothing. No CCTV covered the path to the apartment. No cameras watched the window. But soon, a different kind of footage began to emerge. The footage of the public mind. When the physical leads went cold, the world began to look at the parents. They looked at the calm, stoic faces of the doctors and mistook grief for guilt. They began to ask, how could a child disappear in a 10-minute window? Why were the dogs reacting to the scent of death in a rental car hired weeks after the disappearance? By August 2007, 3 months after Madeleine vanished, the investigation had hit a wall of silence. No ransom notes, no sightings, no physical evidence. Desperate for a breakthrough, Polícia Judiciária brought in 2 specialist dogs from the United Kingdom. Eddie was a victim recovery dog, trained to detect the scent of human remains. Keela was a bloodhound, trained to find even a microscopic drop of human blood. The world watched, breathless, as footage emerged of the dogs moving through apartment 5A. In the living room, behind the sofa, Eddie barked. A hit. In the bedroom, near the window, another hit. But it was what happened in the parking lot that changed everything. The dogs were led to a fleet of rental cars. They bypassed 10 vehicles and stopped at a silver Renault Scenic. The car had been rented by the McCanns 25 days after Madeleine disappeared. To the Portuguese investigators, led by the controversial Gonçalo Amaral, this was the smoking gun. They theorized that the McCanns had accidentally killed Madeleine, hid in her body, and then used the rental car to move her weeks later. Jerry and Kate McCann were officially declared arguidos, or formal suspects. But forensic science is rarely as simple as a dog's bark. The blood found behind the sofa was so degraded it was impossible to confirm it belonged to Madeleine. It could have been the scent of meat or old blood from a previous tenant. The scent of death in the car? Experts argued that it could have been transferred from the McCann's own clothing. Clothes they had worn while handling Madeleine's toys and blankets back in England. There was also the rumor of the British spy influence. Local Portuguese investigators whispered that the British government was interfering, using their diplomatic weight to shield the McCanns. This tension between the two nations created a toxic environment where evidence was often overshadowed by ego. While Jane Tanner's sighting of a man carrying a child is the most famous, there is another sighting that many believe is the true key to the night. It is known as the Smith Man sighting. At approximately 9:59 p.m., just moments before the alarm was raised, an Irish family, the Smiths, were walking toward the beach. They saw a man carrying a blonde girl in pajamas. The man didn't look like a tourist. He looked purposeful. He was walking away from the Ocean Club toward the outskirts of town. When the Smiths later saw Jerry McCann on television, they noted a striking similarity in his gait and build. This fueled the Portuguese theory for years. However, in 2013, British investigators under Operation Grange revealed a shocking twist. The man Jane Tanner saw earlier that night was actually just a British tourist carrying his own daughter back from a creche. This meant the Jane Tanner lead was a red herring that had wasted years of investigation. The Smithman sighting remains the most credible image of a potential kidnapper. In 2020, the world was introduced to a new face of evil, Christian Bruckner. A German national and convicted sex offender, Bruckner had lived on the Algarve coast between 1995 and 2007. He was a drifter, a burglar, a man who lived in a distinctive yellow and white VW camper van. Local rumors in Praia da Luz had long spoken of a man in the window who targeted vacation rentals. Bruckner fit the profile of a predatory burglar, someone who broke into apartments not just for money, but for the thrill of the intrusion. Cell phone records placed Bruckner in the immediate area of the Ocean Club on the night Madeleine disappeared. He had received a phone call that lasted 30 minutes, ending just before the window in apartment 5A was opened. Even more chillingly, a witness claimed that Bruckner had once said of Madeleine, "German prosecutors have stated they have concrete evidence that Madeleine is dead and that Bruckner is responsible. They believe he entered the room through the unlocked patio door, intending to rob the place, but took the child when the opportunity arose. Yet, as of today, no body has been found. No charges for her kidnapping have been filed. Bruckner remains a shadow, the latest in a long line of suspects who seem to lead back to the same void. There is a yellow ribbon tied to a gate in Rothley, England. It has been there for nearly 2 decades. Jerry and Kate McCann no longer live as Arguidos. Their suspect status was lifted years ago. They have spent millions of pounds and every ounce of their emotional energy keeping Madeleine's face on the world's screens. They still buy birthday presents for her. They still keep her bedroom exactly as it was. They live in a state of ambiguous loss, a psychological limbo where grief cannot begin because the ending is unknown. Like the family of Elisa Lam, the McCanns are victims of a digital age that demands a resolution. But unlike Elisa, Madeleine has never been brought home. She remains a girl of 3 forever. 2 cases, 2 continents, 2 families shattered by a few minutes of missing time. In Los Angeles, we have the footage, but no explanation. In Portugal, we have the explanation, but no footage. We are obsessed with these stories because they represent our greatest fear, that we can be seen by the whole world and still be completely lost, that a camera can be rolling and still miss everything. Elisa Lam's journey ended in a tank of water. Madeleine McCann's journey is, officially, still ongoing. But as we close this investigation, remember that these are not characters in a thriller. They are not content for a Saturday night. They are people. If you have seen something, if you know something, speak. Because the only thing more terrifying than surveillance footage that leads nowhere is the silence that follows. Thank you for walking these dark halls with us. If you believe that cases like these deserve a respectful, factual voice, please subscribe and share this documentary. Our goal is to keep these names alive, not for views, but for justice. In the comments below, I want to hear your thoughts, but please keep them respectful to the families. Behind every grainy frame of footage is a human life,